Okay, so this is gonna be a quick video where I'm just creating a basic Reshade preset. This is also the first time that I'm trying to do a voiceover, but I will explain everything as I go. There might be sped up sections, there might be cut sections, so just be aware of that. Right now I'm getting G-pose set up. As you can see, I moved my Kinesis window down in the bottom right, and I made sure that the G-pose depth of field effect is disabled. Now I'm quickly creating a new preset. You can do this by pressing the little plus icon in the top right of the Reshade menu. And just that you are aware, I'm using all of the default shaders that are installed via G-posing way. The only difference to my setup to other people's setups might be that I have the Immerse Ultimate pack installed. And the Immerse Ultimate pack is something that Marty sells on his Patreon. I'm pretty much using the default settings. When Reshade gets installed, these should be the standard, or at least if you install it via G-posing way. And if you want to copy them, just go ahead and do so. And if you're new to Reshade in Final Fantasy, make sure this variable is reversed so it's set to 1. Otherwise some effects might look weird for you. Now that we have removed the vanilla depth of field, we're just gonna add that back in. You can do so by searching for the ADOF effect and just enabling that. And in general, I like this very blurry look in the background. There isn't really a guide that I can do in all of these settings in each effect. You just have to play around with it a little and see what they do. This is a lot of what I'm doing in this video as well. Every time I enable an effect, I'm also playing around with the values. I decide if this looks good for this preset, if it's more towards the direction that I want it to be. So it's very much a creative process. Just try to see what each value does, change it around, and see if you like the result of it. I'm far from an expert in this, but in general the effect settings that you want to look out for are the hyperfocal depth distance. You can adjust that way how your background looks like, and the bokeh highlight type. Number 2 has a very bright and bloomy background, while number 1 has a bit more saturation, and I believe I will change to that later on. I've sped the last section up a little bit, and now we are ready to add our second effect. In this case it's the Vibrance FX effect, and it's a very simple one. As you decrease the vibrance, your image gets less saturated. As you increase it, it gets more vibrant and saturated. So since someone from my Discord asked for a more vibrant shader, I believe that Vibrance FX is just a great effect for that. Just because it's so simple to learn and understand. Next up, we're just gonna add some ambient occlusion as an effect in. You can use any ambient occlusion effect, just search for something like MXAO or AO. They are most of the time called pretty similar things. And this effect will essentially add just more contact shadows. Now I've swapped to the debug view, and you can see that the effect just draws some more shading where areas are close to each other, so you can see between the forehead and the hair, for example, or around the plants where a lot of geometry is overlapping, or around her skirt, there will just be a bit more shading. And usually I just tweak this to be a bit more subtle, so you can't see it right now in the debug view too good, but I will swap it off in a second and then you can see that it makes a tiny difference. As you can see, I'm trying out a different effect, but it didn't really work out for this preset. It made everything too dark and a bit too washed out, so I decided to disable it. And right about now, I should add a effect called AMD Fidelity. It's essentially just a sharpen filter. If you can't find one, just search for sharpen. And because the sharpen filters are quite extreme, I turn the intensity down here quite a lot. And at this point we have a very nice base preset. It's nothing special, but it works as some basic starting point. But because I wanted to push this preset a bit further, I decided to add the bloom and lens flare effect. There are a lot of different settings to it, and essentially what this effect customizes is how the bright spots in your picture behaves. You can see I'm mainly using the option to brighten up the sky quite a lot, and that works so amazing here because the bright blue and whites from the clouds and the sky are just easily picked up by this shader. You might notice that I also added a level effect, and this is just to crank the whites and the blacks a tiny bit more, because I felt like the blacks weren't dark enough and the whites weren't just as bright as I wanted them. At this point I'm gonna use Marty's shaders, so just be aware that these are paid and you have to get them first before you can use them. In order to use RTGI, you will need to enable Launchpad first. Just make sure that if you enable Launchpad, it's at the very top of your shader list. Also, I've made a tiny mistake in this video that I'm gonna correct in a second. If you enable Launchpad, make sure that you toggle the option that says smooth normals, otherwise you will get these little triangles all over your character. And as you can see, I'm dropping quite a lot of values way lower than RTGI has by default. I just don't like that extreme lighting on my character. I prefer using RTGI just to make my character blend in a little more with the environment. I don't use it as much for all of that bounce lighting. Overall, I really love RTGI, just because it's one of the best ray tracing shaders, and it makes your character just blend in a bit more, look a bit more realistic in the environment. And I've been using it in almost all of my presets by now. Speaking of something that I always use, now I'm adding a vignette effect, and I just love the look and how your eyes are getting pulled towards the center point in an image when there's just a tiny bit of vignette. So you can see me adding one in right now, and I'm using the artistic vignette effect for that, but the normal one also works out great. And I'm just doing it very subtle. Now we're slowly approaching another big sped up section, and this is just the most important section of making a preset. Essentially, after you have the general look of your preset done, you will go back in and just tweak some of the values again, and you can see me just doing that here right now. This is the most time consuming process out of all of this. Creating the basic preset is one part of the whole thing, but tweaking the final preset is the most amount of time you're gonna invest in a new one. Now that we have tweaked the preset and I'm pretty happy with it, I'm adding the last effect. In this instance, it's the lens distortion effect. I always like to use that because the Final Fantasy camera doesn't have any distortion to it, and it just makes your picture a little bit more realistic. Especially if you warp out the edges a tiny bit, you just get a bit more realism to it. Now I'm just quickly setting up the camera a little bit to later make a picture of it for the thumbnail. And I'm scrolling through the effects just in case you want to copy over those values. I might have also posted this preset on XMA, so if I did, you might find the link in the description. Otherwise, please give me some feedback what I can improve on these videos, and I hope you have a nice day.